Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure, a honor, a privilege to be here with you and to address this very highly selected group of specialists. So my name is Luca Belli. I'm professor at FGV Law School. It's one of the leading academic institutions in Brazil and one of the most relevant in Latin America. Over the past 18 years, I've studied law and technology, and as a lawyer by training, I'm also highly skeptical about the law as a tool of regulation. So I really focus very much not only about regulating through the law, but also regulating through industrial policy, building infrastructures, economic incentive or taxation. And this systemic approach is the one that we embed in our research at the center. And what I'm going to discuss today is the results actually of two of our flagship projects that are international projects. One is dedicated to LATAM, I will discuss this afternoon, and the other one is dedicated to BRICS. So I study emerging economies and how they lead with technology. And why this brings me to the issue of digital sovereignty. The first phase of one of our flagship projects called Cyber BRICS that maps and is literally the only research project in the world that maps and compares the digital approaches of the BRICS countries. And the first phase was dedicated to cybersecurity. And while we were analyzing this, we ended up understanding that there is an overlap between cybersecurity, which is understanding the systems, understanding the vulnerabilities, and mitigating the risks, and digital sovereignty, which is understanding the systems, but not only to mitigate the risks, but also to take advantage of the opportunities, right? And this led us to develop an entire stream of research dedicated to digital sovereignty, but then in the subsequent phase of the project, analyze the digital transformation strategies of the BRICS and the AI governance of the BRICS. And what is nowadays we discuss in terms of AI sovereignty is the follow-up of this initial phase. Now, we adopted an agnostic approach to digital sovereignty because we know very well that there are bad and good expressions of it. And so we have spent literally 3 years mapping how the BRICS grouping, and there is a lot of things that should not be copied in the BRICS, but there are a lot of very interesting things that should be studied, not copied. As an academic, I will tell you, you should never copy and paste, but you should study. Right, and there are some very interesting teaching that I think I would like to challenge a little bit what Matteo Valera was mentioning, that Europeans have to educate the global South, because I think there are a lot of things also that Europeans may learn from the global South, and not necessarily all the global South needs to be educated. Some interesting point is that we adopted an agnostic approach. We mapped what are the realities of the policies and the experiment with digital sovereignty in the BRICS. And of course, there is a full spectrum. You go from the autocratic and digital autarky, which is absolutely not what we should promote. But then you also find that there is a lot of good digital sovereignty, which is leveraging technology to empower people, to foster creativity, to foster competition, and to create alternatives. And that is the good digital sovereignty that we should promote. Let me give you a very good example of how Brazil and India have been leveraging digital public infrastructures for digital sovereignty in payments. I'm pretty sure very few people here are familiar with the PIX system, which is our digital public infrastructure in Brazil for payment. So before adopting this, we were totally reliant, as pretty much all countries in the world, on Visa and MasterCards for electronic payment, which means that for every single payment, we paid 3 to 5% to Visa and MasterCard. And nowadays, we don't do it because we have a digital public infrastructure that is free. It costs 10 million per year to maintain the Brazilian Central Bank. And not only every customer receives into their pockets 3 to 5%, which would be the Nobel of economy. Not only this staggering success, but very few people understand that Visa and MasterCard, they do not earn most of their money from the 3 and 5%. They earn most of their money for all the data they collect and or the AI, the insight they build based on the data. They are big data companies, right? So the fantastic impact of PIX is not only reverting 3 to 5% into the pockets of the Brazilian customers, which is enormous. There are 260 million transactions per day. We are speaking about billions, but also distributing the capacity to collect and process data in Brazil, in Brazilian institutions that are creating innovation out of it, respecting Brazilian law and paying taxes in Brazil. So that is the power of you building, understanding how the system works and building an alternative, not only regulating it, because our antitrust regulator would have cried, but and tried to adopt every single orthodox tool in the toolbox of the antitrust regulator, would have never broken the Visa and MasterCard duopoly, never. But by creating an alternative, we have become digitally sovereign in payment. If tomorrow Trump wants to switch off Visa and MasterCard, we keep on having our payment, and it's for free. And actually, Brazil has not invented this, as improved and copied this from India. India has UPI, the Uniform Payment Infrastructure, since 2016. And very few people know that actually India copied this from Russia. After the first invasion of Crimea, annexing Crimea in 2014, the first sanction for Russia was the prohibition to use Visa and MasterCard. So overnight, they needed to develop a domestic system, the Mir system, Mir like the space station. They are not very creative in names, but anyway, this was a 20th century system, so a software, but also a hardware, the card. The great idea of the Indians has been to leverage their skills, high software engineering skills, to make a software-only digital public infrastructure. And Brazil has upgraded it because it is a truly public service, not public because it is publicly available like in India, it's publicly because it is a public service managed by the Brazilian central bank, right? That is only one example for you to understand that how do we define then digital sovereignty? Is the capacity to understand, to develop, and to regulate technology. So there are a lot of definitions of scholars, but very few actually no one before us understood that the development part is the key one. It's not only understanding and regulating, it's development. And you do this because the objective is self-determination, is autonomy, is agency, is control. And those are key principles that are already existing actually in fundamental rights. Everyone here under Article 1 of the the UN Charter, the acts of the International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights, the Covenants on Economic and Social Rights, and in the Article 1 creates self-determination as the principle of principle. The capacity to be free to define your own destiny, how your economic and social development happen. Self-determination is the basis. Now, how does this connect to AI? And very much for the previous very eloquent presentation, because they saved me a lot of time to explain the details of this. So over the past years, we have worked on what I call the AI sovereignty stack. So understanding what are the key AI sovereignty facilitators, right? Many of them have been mentioned, but not everyone, not all of them. And I think that I identified 8. So of course we have data, we have algorithmic capacity, we have computational capacity. Then very few people understand that you also need meaningful connectivity to things for work. And I will also explain why this becomes a vulnerability when it doesn't exist. You need electricity, you need cybersecurity, you need humanware, you need humans that are highly skilled. And then you also need risk mitigation, which is what the European Union has been focusing a lot. Now, let me go through this, hopefully in a quick way, to understand why each of them is key. And if you don't look at the full picture, you create vulnerability. Data, we have seen why they are relevant. It's not only relevant to have them, it's also relevant to understand what you have and to leverage them. Be aware that China, we all say that the data is the new oil, but it's not oil. Because oil, if you drill oil in Brazil, Argentina, Russia, or Texas, it's always oil. High quality data about Brazilian population, about Brazilian administration, about Brazilian research, you cannot find them elsewhere. So it's a very valuable asset and a unique asset. And that is why China, since 2019, consider it a factor of production, like labor, capital, and work. And why they have defined their policies out of it. Again, there are a lot of things that one should not copy from China, but there are a lot of things that one should study about how they approach technology. Because also because they have managed to develop in 30 years in a way that no one else has done. So there must be something interesting to be studied, right? Algorithmic capacity. I think it has been explained very well by the previous speakers. If you don't have algorithms, if you don't have software, you are actually dependent from others. But I would like to build up on a comment that was made before about NVIDIA. NVIDIA, they present themselves as a hardware company, but they are not a hardware company. They're a design and software company. They do not build their GPUs. They build everything in Taiwan. They are totally dependent on TSMC. They design the GPU, they build the software that is proprietary software. The CUDA or the AI enterprise are proprietary software. So if you want to leverage full capacity of GPUs, you have to pay a license, a fee. And that is why Trump wants to regulate and restrict access to software. Hardware, it has been mentioned how relevant it is. It has not been mentioned. We are all dependent on three tech companies, basically, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud that have 70% of the market. Everyone that wants to do AI in the world except China depends on them, and they all depend on NVIDIA, and NVIDIA depends on TSMC. So this is how the market is concentrated, and NVIDIA is now cross-investing in all of them. So I also wanted to challenge a comment made by Luis Moreno Campo yesterday about the fact that these guys are not united. They are extremely united. Check the structure of their shares, and you will see that they all cross-invest into each other billions. That there are the 10 biggest fortunes that were mentioned yesterday. They are all intimately intertwined and very united. They have billions at stake altogether. Meaningful connectivity. There is a very gross misunderstanding of how connectivity works in the global south. People in the global south are not connected to the internet. Gustavo Belli was mentioning yesterday that people have more access to smartphones than sanitation is true. But in the global south, having access to a smartphone does not give you access to the internet. Meta has invested in very skillful schemes over the past 8 years in what are called zero-rated plans. Most people in the world are poor, and most poor people use pre-planned mobile internet. It means that you have very limited monthly caps on how data you have, and then you have free zero-rated apps that coincidentally are only social media owned by Meta. So 78% of the population in Brazil does not have access to the internet. They have access to Meta family of apps. What does it mean for it? It's not besides all the other negative externalities in terms of democracy and pollution and in terms of mental pollution through disinformation. But let's not consider this for a moment. What does it mean in terms of AI? That if you automatically install Meta AI in all your, I will wrap up, in all your social media, it means that you can spend billions. I'm telling this to my government. You can spend billions in computational capacity, in algorithmic capacity, but 78% of the population will never use the excellent Brazilian innovation that you create. They will only use Meta AI. And this is why a few weeks ago, OpenAI has partnered with a Brazilian operator, Claro, to give for free ChatGPT, because they know that they cannot compete if you don't use the same sneaky technique. That actually it is illegal in Brazil and could be banned tomorrow if we only apply the law that we already have. That is why I'm skeptical about law, because the fact that having law doesn't guarantee that you apply it well. I will wrap up in just 1 minute, as we have started with a little bit of delay. So humanware, I think it's pretty evident why you need to educate people, to have people that understand, not only understand the risk, but are also able to develop AI and not only mere consumers of AI. Electricity. The reason why there are going to be huge investment from US tech companies in Brazil in this moment is that electricity has finished in US. There is no more electricity. Brazil has an enormous asset, which is abundant, clean energy. And this has been the result of industrial policy. Since the 60s, we built dams, hydroelectrics, and we have now very abundant, we have actually a surplus of clean energy, which is an enormous asset in this moment. Cybersecurity, self-evident, if you don't look at it, we built a time bomb. And risks, of course, cybersecurity is about system being hacked. Risks of what kind of impact, negative impact AI could have on society, especially on human rights, this is a core point. And this is the main point, if not the only, that Europe has been looking at over the past years. I think Europe should have looked at the rest of the stack. if they wanted to be sovereign and to build an alternative. So to conclude, these key principles, if there will be a digital Rerum Novarum, I hope that these key principles, self-determination of peoples and individuals, human agency, individual control, they get into this. Because if we do not have self-determination, agency, and control, we cannot embed human dignity into AI. But AI will be used to dehumanize people. Thank you very much.